So I'm here with Sophia from INS Career Management and Jim Vass from ATV Partners, just to chat about their relationship over the years and the way they've worked together and grown INS. So, Sophia, as I understand it, you walked into the office with a big piece of butcher's paper and a whole load of scribbles. Is that pretty much how this started?
Pretty much, with my then business partners, Rosalind Mitchell and Gwen Durham. We walked into Jim's office. I had met Jim at a networking event and was taken with him and thought we were looking for an accountant. So we thought nothing to lose. The other two ladies didn't know anyone. And we gave ourselves strict instructions that we were going to come in and interview somebody because we really needed to make the right decision.
Yeah. Because you had big plans for this business from the very get-go, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely. And we were never a small business. We started with 15 people.
Right.
So in essence, we needed the systems and processes of a medium-sized organisation because we intended we were going to take over the world.
Yeah.
And
great.
Jim, to his credit, didn't burst out laughing. I'm sure he wanted to.
Well, no, actually, because it's, as a startup, like typically you get a lot of people walking in as a startup and they're saying, well, we have this idea and we want to start a business. Well, these three ladies were different when they walked in because they actually had a business plan. They'd actually documented a business plan and they had a contract.
Right.
They actually had a contract already and saying, okay, so wait a second, you got this contract, I can't even remember how much it was for. And sort of thing.
Decent sized contract.
And we've got a contract and we've got a business plan, but we really haven't got much else here.
Nope.
So what was your first job, Jim, for them?
Well, actually, just to make it was quite funny because all the ladies, we met I think for about an hour and a half, and then the ladies walked out to the left. And there was a meeting in the boardroom which I got into, and I just said, oh yeah, it's had an interesting meeting, and because the parting words were, we'll make a decision.
Okay.
We've got a. I think it was either interview with other people, whatever, before we make a decision.
Yeah, fair enough.
And they ended up coming straight back in from the left. They said, well, you've got the gig if you want it.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
great. And what was your first thing that, obviously you had to structure this right, because if you didn't...
Yeah. Well, it was, originally you'd set up,
We'd set up a company. Yeah.
Okay.
which we had to restructure because it wasn't, again, it was set up in a vanilla type of way.
Okay.
And it's typically how most accountants or a solicitor, if you go to a solicitor or an accountant, that's how they're going to set up. It's just nice and straightforward vanilla, but what we always look for is flexibility. We had three individuals coming from three separate families, where the business had brought them together, so we actually had to make sure that we provided a structure that's going to provide each individual within that group with the flexibility that they needed to meet their own personal goals.
Yeah. And how did that feel at the beginning when you said, okay, there you go? Did you feel confident in Jim?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely confident and very pleased that we had somebody who bought into our dream.
Yeah,
very much. And I guess we and I still remain incredibly idealistic. And Jim is one of the things that he treads the line between is supporting my dream and vision and trying to create some practicality.
Yeah, right.
I still can't read a balance sheet. I shouldn't be saying this on film, but I've read because he
That's
makes
right, because
me.
I read it to you. It's okay.
That's right. But every month, without fail, we go through it, and he makes me go through the P&L, and it doesn't matter. So now I know enough. I know what money I'm bringing in. I know what my expenses are. I know what we want to bring in, and then Jim looks after everything else.
And so, how much do you think that reduces the burden on you as the business owner?
To have somebody who is like another partner,
right.
Without having a stake in the business, but he still acts like another business partner.
Yeah.
He is, and I know he has my back, and I know we've gone through some really dark times in this business, and Jim's there. He's had my back. He's had my back from an accounting point of view, but he's had my back from an emotional point of view as well, and you cannot buy that in a contract.
No.
Well, you can't. I don't think you could word it in emotional support and whatever. But yeah, I know that there's been times, and it hasn't happened a lot of the times, but there's been times where we've been on the phone at 1 o'clock in the morning, going through the final details of a costing for a tender and stuff like that, where you just sort of think, well, it needs to be done. We've got to do it, and like, yeah, well, I think it'd be fairly hard, and I empathise with Sophia. I wouldn't want to be on my own having to try to do that.
No.
And with one of the, I suppose, the corner principles of my life is you've got to treat people as you'd like to be treated. So if there's a time that I know that I'd really appreciate some help, well, I've got to do the same.
Dark times. Do you want to give us an example and give us an example of how Jim helped you through that?
The government, yes.
Deal with government. Well, there we go. Those contracts must be complicated, right?
Yes, I think all three of us, and particularly me, I was a public servant for 10 years.
Okay.
A long, long time ago. I left the public service in the late 90s. But I have an absolute burning belief in public service and its role in community. And so, whilst I've worked across all sectors, I keep coming back to government. And it is a difficult beast to work with.
Yeah.
And it is not always the most ethical beast to work for, and you wouldn't think that.
No.
But government contracts have in them a clause that allows them to walk away without cause at any time.
Oh, wow.
And everyone who works with government, it doesn't matter what protections you put there,
Wow.
they have that clause.
They could be catastrophic. You've got huge contracts here where you put huge teams in to fulfill it, and then they can just turn it off.
They can just turn it off.
Wow.
Our first contract ended probably a little more suddenly than we had anticipated, and quite catastrophically in terms of income. We had 54 staff and 5 floors, and a dream that we had sold 54 people.
Yeah. That would have sucked. That would have absolutely sucked.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. So we went through that. One of my partners, Gwen, decided it was too much and she wanted out. And with all the planning in the world, and we had a shareholders agreement, with all the planning in the world, that didn't go according to plan. So that was stressful. And then Rosalind became ill. She had some serious health problems. And so while she stayed in the business for quite some time, theoretically, on paper, she wasn't in the business
Working.
And so we went through and downsized to a quarter of a floor and 6 staff.
Wow. And where was Jim's input with that? How did he help you
Right
get
next
through
to
that?
me, all the way through, in terms of, from everything, from structuring the partnership or the partnership deals, from helping us walk that line. And what a terrible position Jim was in during that time, because the 3 of us were tight, and Jim was everyone's accountant, and he was close to all of us in a different way. He had a different relationship with each person, I think you can say.
Yeah.
And he had to tread that line.
Wow.
So the fact that we're still doing business after
that's
something
fantastic.
so catastrophic, and that he had to work us through, and first extricate Gwen, which was less amicable at the beginning than we would have liked, but it turned out okay.
Yeah.
And then Rosalind, which was completely amicable, but still had to meet her
Still had to
needs.
do it.
Yeah. And then the rebuilding, which was slow, and I should have taken the money and run. That's what anybody who was in business just to make money would have done.
Yeah.
And I know that's what Jim would have liked me to have done.
Well, there was certainly that option was definitely on the table, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, part of it's with everything, you got to figure out people. I think I figured out so fairly well that it's good if you can make money out of it, but it's more so about what she's doing.
Yeah.
So she's quite passionate about what she's doing and delivering, I suppose, there's a social responsibility part of what makes Sophia tick.
Yeah.
So you can't always look at it's about money.
Yeah.
Okay, what we've got to look at is we've got to make sure that we have the money to do what we need to do, but it's not, the sole driver is not making a profit and getting rich.
So it's about purpose, it's about, I've heard you talk about your team, it's important that you do the right thing by them. And
Absolutely.
That's good, that's good.
Well, I've never met anybody that treats her team better than Sophia.
And you can sort of see that from a couple of photos on the website I've seen, you know, you can see the happiness in them, it looks great.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's important. I mean, one of the things I want to do is run a company. I want to show that you can make money and not be driven by it, not be driven by KPIs. That you can still make money and be driven by much bigger things.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So how would you describe your business today? Come through the dark, driven up the hill, where are you at now?
We're about to go down another plunging hill.
Oh, yeah?
It's a roller
But
coaster.
this
Yeah,
one
well,
at
that's
least
good.
is planned, and a contract that I thought was going to end in December 2018 is likely to end in June. But at least we have some warning, and I think I've matured a lot as a business owner, and I care for each and every person, but I didn't sell them a dream I couldn't keep.
Yeah.
And so I hired people for this contract, and to the best of my ability, I will keep people past that. But
One of these things though that I suppose probably hasn't become apparent though, you were down to 8 staff prior to this contract. What's your head count now? About 50?
Yeah, 50, yeah.
About 50. So we're up on an upward spiral, and every week we're getting new paperwork. Hey, we've got a new starter. We've got a new starter. We just sort of think, okay, keep on processing, and
So you're at the whole financial department for INS. Is that pretty much the go? Yeah.
Pretty
So
much it,
payroll, day-to-day accounting, budget, strategy.
Well, we worked. Roles are changing slightly now because we're trying to get the team within INS to do a few things internally.
Yeah.
But historically, we started with a restructure, managing we were the accounts department. There wasn't anybody that touched anything in the accounts. We would be managing the cash flow of the business by determining when creditors would be getting paid, what would be holding off, dependent upon what money was coming in and what was going out, managing the tax position of the business as well and the tax payments.
Yeah.
Very early in the piece, we'd actually had done with our cash flow forecast, we'd actually determined that we needed about a $600,000 overdraft.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, the ladies could only get $500,000.
Right.
So we knew we were going to have a $100,000 hole, which we had to get out of for 3 months. So what we did is we then managed the cash flow by robbing Peter to pay Paul for that period and got us through it. But at least we knew enough to sort of say get a facility in place well before we needed it.
Yeah.
And also then the rest of it was just basically the managing of the cash flow and having people sort of holding off payments and the rest of it in order to make sure that we could get through it.
That's right.
And we have not, and from that point, we have not had, we have no debt. We have run this entire company on the money that we earned. So.
Well, we predicted that facility would be required for 6 months.
Yeah.
And it was required for 6 months, and then we extinguished this facility. We didn't need it any longer.
Fantastic.
And since then, it's been purely off its own working.
We would have folded. I knew nothing about business. I knew nothing about things like what is it called, trading insolvent. I knew nothing about what did I know about that? I was a management consultant for 15 years. It's a different kind of business. And the ladies were in, paid employment.
Yeah.
So, without that guidance, very quickly we would have gotten ourselves into both financial and legal problems. And now at least I know enough to ask the questions, but I didn't then. But having somebody else to watch your cash flow, to tell you when you're danger, to be able to stand up to you, because when you are the boss, people will talk to you and they will try and guide you, but you're still the boss. Yeah.
And they'll say yes sometimes for other reasons, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you have somebody who is not frightened of you for any reason, he doesn't need my business.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I'm
I
sure
guess-
it's great, but
And his only motivation is for you to succeed, right?
100%.
And that's really important.
Yeah.
Because someone else might have inside the organisation might be looking more after their own back and their own interest, but your interest in Sophia's business is for it to do well.
you know what? Nobody in my business, I don't believe, just has their own back.
No, sure.
It's not that. It's just that I'm a really strong personality,
Right. Okay.
and it's really hard to stand up to me.
Okay.
So you need somebody equally strong, equally as stubborn, who you can go
I think
head
that's
to
it.
head
That's
with.
the word. Stubborn is the word.
Yeah,
Yes.
that you can go head to head with,
Right.
and know that it won't destroy your relationship.
And you've had a few head-to-heads over the years.
Look, we've had a few. You shouldn't be doing this. This is what's going to happen if you do this. I suppose maybe the choice of words has been good. That Sophia actually sort of sees the light. Sometimes says, "All right, well, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll do something different."
Yeah.
But look, typically, because I suppose we're working fairly closely with each other, nothing's really coming as a surprise.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't expect that. And typically, if something is going to happen, I know what Sophia's going to do. I know Sophia well enough now to sort of say it's not going to be the cheapest route she's going to go down. Money's not going to be a consideration, and then I've just got to know to sort of say, all right, well, will our cash flow allow this? Because if it will allow it, it's pointless butting heads over it. It's just simply a matter of saying, all right, well, we can do it. Ultimately, I appreciate the fact that it's Sophia's money, and she's a very generous person, and she's not going to cut corners or try to skimp or whatever. So she's going to do what she feels right to do.
It's just
My role is to facilitate it, to make sure that we can do it.
One of the things about being a management consultant for so long is that I work with a lot of companies, small companies, as well as major corporations, and I noticed that many of them, when they got into trouble, the first thing that suffered was their staff, and they but they often would spend their money, try to spend their way out of difficulty, and then when it came to the end, they didn't have enough money to pay their staff. And it was one of the things, like, in many ways I feel like we run our company like really effective housewives who have budgets. So I have an account for my redundancies. It doesn't really matter whether I need them or not, but can I pay my super? Can I pay my leave? Is that money protected? Because that's really important. Now, from an accounting point of view, that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's not always the best way.
But look, I mean, we always sort of, because we know that's how Sophia is, and she's not going to try to, even though legally she may be able to get out of, with most of the redundancies, it's always been paying over and above what was required. So we just basically sort of say, all right, well, knowing this, we've got to make a provision, and we actually separate a lump of cash to say, well, that's sitting there. And one of Sophia's questions every month is, how's that redundancy account looking? Because we've got to make sure, and it's not a provision, it's actually a bank account with money sitting in it. We can sort of say, right, if we're finishing people up, we have the money to pay them. So nobody's going to go without. Everybody's going to get what they're owed. And that's what's important to Sophia. And from my perspective, if we can facilitate it, we do that.
And it's not because I expect to need it. So that's not the point at all. It's not the point of that at all. I just see that as not my money. Yeah.
That is.
So it's, you know, so Jim is very flexible around his accounting, and I have outsourced my accounts. It's not something I want to do in-house.
No.
We are learning a little more about how to manage some things, but never to the extent where we will do it in-house.
No.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophia. Thank you for coming in.